This episode is sponsored by the Cornell S.E. Johnson College of Business. The Cornell Executive MBA Americas program is designed for goal achievers from any industry. The program works by advancing your career without interruption, by providing global perspectives and intimate classroom settings, and by challenging, informing, connecting, and propelling you. Achieve your goals with the Cornell Executive MBA Americas program on the weekend and close to home. Search Cornell EMBA Americas in my city today.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Maricella Herrera and Megan Oliver.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast. I'm your host, Maricella Herrera, with my co-host, Megan Oliver. As per usual, Megan, how's it going?
It is going well. It's still June, which is fabulous. We love Pride Month.
We do.
Yes. We're going to go ahead and dive right into what's happening at Ellevate because we have a little bit of news for you after that. So if that's okay with you, Maricella, I'm going to go ahead and get started.
It's your podcast.
All right. So we don't have any roundtables coming up, at least that we have scheduled. This is a few weeks recorded in advance. We might have a roundtable scheduled at this point. Please check our website. But as of right now, we don't have any roundtable scheduled for this week. We do go some weeks where we give everybody a break. But we do have several community circles coming up. The LGBTQIA one is Wednesday, which is today. That's the special Pride Month one. This month's is we alternate between allies being welcome and just the community. This month for Pride Month, we just want to do just the community, just kind of a big shebang, and also, reflections on everything that's happened this year, because it's been a lot to be in the community this year. But also our 40 plus professionals are meeting next Tuesday, as well as our Black Women Plus are meeting next Tuesday. We have a ton of in-person events coming up in the next week. So listen out for your area. If you hear somewhere that you're near or going to be near in the next week, definitely stop in to see some of our amazing chapters. Our Austin chapter is going to be hosting a networking event about how it's not all about business. That's on Wednesday. Our Miami chapter is hosting a happy hour, a wine tasting experience, also on Wednesday. Our Dubai chapter is hosting a special event, Visit the Museum of the Future and Networking at the Agency Lounge on Wednesday. I want to visit the Museum of the Future. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like I need to go there.
Yeah.
Our New York City chapter is hosting an executive breakfast all about revisiting and refreshing your 2023 goals. That's on Thursday. Pittsburgh is hosting a happy hour, fill your cup, celebrate your grit with us, Thursday. Atlanta is hosting a social networking mixer on Thursday. Boston is holding a space of belonging, celebrating DEIB achievements for professional women on Thursday. San Diego is hosting their June coffee walk on Sunday. And Seattle is hosting their No Sweat Reconnect, exploring wine at the House of Smith next Tuesday.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are a lot of in-person events, and not to forget, squad applications are open currently. Our squad programs is something that you don't want to miss. It's a great way to get to know people and really build deeper relationships with a group of trusted advisors. So we will pair you up, handpick your groups, and you can get to meet with them, talk about your challenges, get advice, get different perspectives. We do the work for you. All you have to do is show up. So if you're feeling uncertainty, if you're looking for some sounding boards, some thoughts, some, I don't know, just grounding, our squads are going to be a lifeline for you. So really, really suggest that you check those out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Megan said at the top of this interview that we had some news, and it's true. We do. This is the last podcast that I will be here with y'all. My tenure at Ellevate is coming to an end. This is really hard to say, as you can probably hear it in my voice. It's been quite a ride, 11 years of building community, getting to know people who are fantastic, and It's been a really hard decision to make because I love this community like you have no idea, and the team behind it even more. Um, but it's been 11 years, and it's time for me to find my next adventure. And I will forever be grateful for the time I've had here, for the opportunities I've had to grow. The last year as CEO was something I did not expect, really did not expect. And I am thankful for having had that opportunity to lead our team through some ups and downs and some really hard times. Uh, to continue to see the community come together, be there for each other, support each other, it just has been amazing. I've gotten to know so many people through Ellevate that I consider now lifelong friends, and will be in great hands. Megan will be here and, continuing to take the podcast into the future. Our team at Ellevate will continue to build community, build the spaces for you to come together. Um, you'll still hear me in some interviews. There's a lot of pre-taped interviews, so
A
you,
lot.
huh?
I said there's a lot.
So you'll definitely be hearing me during those, and I hope you do enjoy them. I've had a lot of fun actually doing those and getting to know people through the podcast, and there'll be more to come from me. I'll make sure to let Megan know so she can keep you updated.
Yes, I will absolutely keep you all updated. This is not, it's not goodbye by any means, though that doesn't mean that it's not emotional. Um, but I will still be here. I'm going to keep you. I'm here on the podcast. We have a billion interviews. We currently have enough interviews scheduled out. We literally have enough right now to get us to the beginning of November. So don't worry, you will still get to hear Maricella for a really long time. And then I have a few interviews peppered in there as well. But we will always make sure that this podcast stays in good hands and keeps getting out to you.
Oh God, I still remember when uh, it was just an idea that Sally, back in the day, Sally Krawcheck, when she was still very involved with Ellevate, told me we should start a podcast. Go figure it out. And here we are, so many years later. So it's been so great.
Yeah. And I still remember when you said, "Hey Megan, we're thinking about giving you the podcast." Like just to work in the background. And I kind of went from, just scheduling guests, but not really having any like involvement in it, to being kind of producer Megan and then making occasional cameos, to doing like, the one random co-host job because somebody else couldn't make it or something like that, then to being a full-time co-host, and now I guess you're host for the Ellevate podcast.
It's growth.
Yeah, but
And you've
we
done
are
an
all,
amazing job, Megan. So
oh, thank you so much. So have you. And we're all like very, very excited to see what you do next. I know that, I mean, obviously we can't say anything, but you have some fun things planned in the works that I'm sure we're all looking forward to.
yeah, I will. There is a podcast on the horizon that I will be sharing with
I was
y'all.
gonna say, I don't know how much I can tease about this, but I was gonna say the reason it's not goodbye is Maricela is not leaving the podcast world, y'all.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm hooked. But we'll see. We'll see. I still don't know like with clarity what my next steps are, and I know that we preach this a lot. I preach this a lot. Oxygen mask on first, and I need to take a break. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I agree.
Well,
But all that being said, do you want to introduce our guest
I was
this
gonna
week?
say, so you're with these news, I think you might be able to have a little bit of a different perspective when you hear the questions I ask, both in this interview and some of the ones that are to come. Our guest today is Aliza Licht. She's a former communications executive. She taught herself how to authentically tell a brand's stories and foster a passionate fan base because she was the person behind a very popular social media persona that was anonymous. It was DKNY PR Girl. I mean, it really is like the first of the influencers, and it was really big. I remember it. Once her identity was revealed, she changed from the corporate world and rebranded herself as someone that is more of a personal brand. And so the reason I say you'll listen to this interview and it might make sense is because I do ask her a lot about what do you do when your brand is tied to a company? Because, after 11 years at Ellevate, I feel like I have her logo tattooed like fully on my back. um, but she's really great. And she didn't know actually when I was asking these questions that I was in the process of leaving. So it was an interesting conversation. However, she did send me her book on brand, Shape Your Narrative, Share Your Vision, Shift Their Perception. And I will say it has been very helpful. So highly recommend. I hope this conversation is also helpful for you as it was for me. So here's my interview with Aliza. Welcome, everyone. Today I am here with Aliza Licht. Aliza, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? So happy to be here.
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get to chat with you. So I was on Aliza's podcast not so long ago. So we're turning the tables today, and I get to ask questions and get to share with our listeners a lot about your work, which I'm very excited about.
Thank you.
So I always start with the big question. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what brought you to what you are doing today?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first of all,
I know it's
thank
big.
you for starting off with that high note of a long story that I'm going to make super short. But my career really started in the fashion industry. I started on the magazine side of the business and then moving over to corporate PR a little bit later, and really spent my first 17 years working as a publicist for Donna Karan until 2009, when I created this anonymous social media personality called DKNY PR Girl that was inspired by Gossip Girl for the company, which sort of was one of the first examples of a fashion influencer, even though we didn't know that word at the time. And that sort of catapulted me from corporate PR person into a personality and led to my first book, Leave Your Mark. And today I'm a consultant and also an author and a podcaster. So Leave Your Mark is my main brand. And obviously my new book is On Brand, which is coming out.
So I wanted to ask you about DKNY PR Girl, which was that that anonymous social media presence you had created, because it's fascinating to me. Like at that point in life, like you said, we didn't really know what influencers were. They didn't really exist. What and you said now that, and I didn't know this, that Gossip Girl was the inspiration. So kind of how did you come up with that idea, and what was the difference when you, because you did publicly afterwards announce, like, share who you were behind that brand?
Yes. So publicists in general, especially back then, were really behind the scenes. And as a
Mhm.
marketing team, when we were sitting around thinking about, well, there's this newish platform called Twitter. This is 2009. What would it mean for us to be on there? And I was concerned, since I was a publicist, that if the Twitter handle was at Donna Karan, people would assume she was tweeting because she's the person and the brand. So I was more coming from a place of like, let's not mess this up and let's make sure that whatever voice is out there, we understand how it's being attributed. So, Gossip Girl was huge back then, the original.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why can't we just have it be anonymous? Like we can have this character and we can, make her go different places and we can have people be on a fly on the wall of her career in PR. And people were like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And when we presented it to our legal team, our general counsel was like, okay, great. But Aliza, you're the only person who has the login for Twitter. And I was like, okay, I don't even know what that meant. I was like, sure, I have no idea. And then, I started tweeting and really, initiation by fire, understanding what would generate engagement and what wouldn't. And very early on, I understood that it was really about storytelling and not about selling anything. So the character became really big. Again, I didn't think of it as me. I was just the person
Right.
anonymously behind it until 2 years of being anonymous was a really long time to be anonymous. And then we finally decided to reveal the person behind the Twitter handle. But it was really one of the first examples of a social media personality that wasn't the designer or that wasn't sort of a spokesperson.
So when you came out and that was, your name behind that handle, even though
Mm-hmm.
it was a created persona for the brand, I guess my question is, how did you separate your personal brand from the DKNY brand?
Well, that is the $1,000,000 question and a great one
Right.
because I couldn't. So when I was revealed as the person, that news generated over 230 million media impressions around the world.
Crazy.
It was crazy. I had no idea. I mean, listen, I knew I had, 400,000 or so
Right.
followers on Twitter, but it was a huge secret. So essentially, when that happened, I clearly had to really think about, well, now when I'm tweeting, they know it's both Aliza Licht and DQI PR girl. And then I really came out a couple, like I guess, so that was 2011. So by 2013, I got my first book deal for Leave Your Mark. And then when Leave Your Mark came out in 2015, then there was no way to separate DKY PR Girl and myself. I am still introduced. Sometimes people will be like, oh, this is DKY PR Girl. I'm like, no, actually, I left the company in 2015. But here's the problem. And this is how my new book, On Brand, starts. When you build a personal brand for something that you don't own, it is a blessing and a curse. So when I left the company, I essentially had to rebrand myself and rediscover who I was without that personality and without my big title and without my big job. And that is really the premise of On Brand, because the understanding that your personal brand needs to represent you and your actual name and not a character that you created for someone else.
Yeah, I read something where you're like, when you were giving tips about networking, and you said, you know, you want to not be Joe from X company, or, in my case, I really resonate with that because I get to be, most of the time it's Maricella from Ellevate.
Yes.
And it's I've been here 10 years, sure, but that doesn't mean I necessarily will be here for another 10 or 20.
Exactly. And I think, listen, we're lucky to have worked
Right.
and have worked for wonderful companies. And there's nothing wrong with leveraging, where you work to sort of add that credibility to your name. But I think my purpose in writing On Brand is to remind people that their names are their sort of God-given names from their parents. And we see that show up on LinkedIn, for example, when people are like Aliza L. And you're like, okay, well, why are you not building equity in your actual name?
Mhm.
So it's just a reminder that what we do today might not be what we do tomorrow, and we need our names to stand on their own. And that is what I learned when I left the company. And it was a very uncomfortable feeling, that first like Monday when I was like, oh, wow, now what? You know?
Yeah, no, I completely get it. We get so tied up in our business or job or kind of that identity that we don't separate. And I think that this is the case even more now, where the world really is, the personal and professional are so mixed and there's blurred lines on it. So this is really a very clear example of it.
Yes.
So if we go back to kind of the basics of personal branding, we've heard personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room, and you have to take control of the narrative. Can you talk to us a little bit about how we do that?
Yes. So, the first thing you have to do is recognize that we're not just talking about what's happening online. Like, you can have a strong personal brand and not be on social media. And I really double down on that in this book because I don't want people to walk away thinking, like, oh, this book is about being an influencer. Like, if you want to be an influencer, this book will help you. But for everyone else, this is really first and foremost asking yourself, what do you want to be known for? In your circles, right? Amongst your friends, your family, your colleagues, and then making sure that other people see you that way. So it starts with analyzing your brand's current state and really asking yourself that question. And a lot of people will say to me, like, oh, well, I don't have a personal brand. And I always
Mhm.
say, but you do. Everyone does have some
Mhm.
version of one because it starts with what makes you you, right? You're leaving an impression in every single medium you're showing up. You're leaving an impression when you send an email. So everyone does have some version. The question is the perception of your brand what you want it to be, right? So, first, asking yourself that question, and then making sure you're taking control of what you can, right? So, you have to make sure your LinkedIn page, you have an all star profile, your bio is speaking the language that you want people to know about you. Maybe you have a personal website or a portfolio, which I think is really important because that's the only place where you have 100% share of voice to convey what you want people to know about you without the interference of an algorithm, right? If you
Mhm.
show up at a cocktail party and someone's like, oh, what's your name? What do you do? Like, what is that narrative? What is that soundbite that people are going to remember so that when they wake up the next morning and they think about who they met the night before, they actually remember what you said? A lot of people don't practice that pitch. And then it becomes, how are you establishing your personal brand in work, right? If you're a corporate employee or you're an entrepreneur, it's even more important because your personal brand actually directly affects the investment that you're getting. People really invest in people, right? More so than ideas. And how you're showing up in meetings and how you present, and then managing that reputation and sustaining that reputation, which also goes back to understanding your belief system, having core values that you stand by, and making sure that you're aligning with things that marry back up to what you want to be known for. Can't just say it, you have to actually do it.
Right. You can't just go and I want to be known for this and expect it to happen. You have to put the work in and put the kind of walk the talk.
Yes.
So we hear a lot about authenticity, and I feel like it's such a try like I don't know, a word that gets thrown around so much. And you want to be able to show up authentically, and you want to it's important for your work culture. It's important for your team if you're a leader. It's important for whatever it is, for your sense of belonging, that you feel like you can show up authentically. Does that authenticity, and I think I know the answer based on what you just said, but do you ever find that that concept and personal brand can get into a little bit of conflict with each other?
Yes, if you are doing things that are in direct conflict with what you say you are and who you are. So, for example, in On Brand, I use Leonardo DiCaprio as the example of in conflict because he flew 8,000 miles in a private jet to accept an environmental award. So that is in direct conflict with having a personal brand that tells everyone that you are someone who cares about the environment. So that's where you really need to understand what you believe and then actually do things that support those beliefs.
And I get this question a lot when I talk about belonging, which is, well, then how do you authentically present yourself without when you are, kind of in the confines of business?
It's a great question. And I am a firm believer that everything you do in shaping your personal brand should be in supportive of whatever your goal is. So if you have stakeholders, whether it is your manager, your CEO, your investors, whoever the people are that sort of control your progress, you need to make sure that you're thinking about them as your audience when you navigate yourself on social media, for example. People
Hmm.
forget it's very easy behind a computer to sort of say whatever you want. But if your investors are watching, if your boss is watching, you have to think about that. And I believe people in corporate roles can leverage their personal brands inside a company. And what that means is not walking around telling people how great you are, but understanding how to convey your value in a way that's strategic and elegant. And that will help you progress in your career. And there are a lot of tools in On Brand for how to share your accomplishments in a way that make you your own hero without making you the villain. Because we all know those people who sort of want to steal the spotlight in a way inside of a
Hmm.
company. But really, when you have a corporate role, you have to always think about, okay, is what I'm doing for myself, for my personal brand, going to affect my company's standing? Am I in any way going to jeopardize my job? Because then it's never worth it.
Okay. Can you give an example of something that would be kind of in an elegant way, like you just said? I like that word.
Yes. So I think, first of all, leveraging colleagues. So
Okay.
sometimes people don't want to be the person to talk about an accomplishment themselves. So if you were going into a team meeting and you wanted your manager to know something that you recently were able to accomplish, why not say to a trusted colleague, hey, if it makes sense, could you sort of drop this into the conversation, and if there's anything you
Mm.
want me to support, let me know. So this works effectively not just when you want to share an accomplishment, but also if you're pitching an idea and you're a little bit nervous that like it's not going to land well, soft sounding with people you trust and saying like, here's the idea, what are your thoughts? When I go in and present this, will you have my back? Will you co-sign it? That sort of whisper network that can happen behind the scenes is a great way to help each other do that.
I love that. That's massive. And I think not just for building your personal brand, but for getting ahead in anything, for having those supporters and, like you said, that whisper network.
Exactly. And one of the rules that I have, because I don't want people to read On Brand and all of a sudden just start talking about themselves all day and how amazing they are, and just, I hate the word bragging. So I try to say that the rules should be, and it doesn't have to be exact, but for every one time that you're sharing a win, that could be on social media, it can be on email, however you communicate, try and amplify 5 other people and great things that they're doing, because that ratio will ensure that people are rooting for you instead of against you.
I love that rule.
I'm so glad.
I really like that because look, I talk about this a lot. For me, I had to super shift my perception of networking, and I don't know if it was cultural. I don't know, but it shifted when I thought about it as helping other people. And this seems the same way, right? Like you're saying great things about yourself, but you're also amplifying other people's voices.
Yes. And in turn, that earns you social capital.
Right. Which honestly is what drives a lot of power in any decision making.
Absolutely.
So I want to go back to your a little bit before, because you were saying that when you're doing stuff on LinkedIn or wherever, think of your audience, right? Think of your managers or your decision makers. Think of the leaders that you want to reach as your audience. The importance of knowing your audience, I think, is massive. And you talked about it on a video on Instagram, which I was seeing, about the Oscars red carpet little snafu there with Hugh Grant
And Ashley Graham.
and
Yes.
Ashley Graham, right?
Yes.
And you talk about how she could have done a better job of knowing her audience, which I thought was a very refreshing, like a very different take from what we were hearing. So can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of knowing audience context, kind of where and when?
Yes. And thanks for asking that question. So there was, if you missed the Oscars, Ashley Graham had this very, very cringy, awkward interview with Hugh Grant. He was a little bit snarky and rude. We have to say that. But the reason why I believe he was that way was because she didn't prepare for the interview. And this goes, forget about red carpet. This goes for if you are interviewing
Right.
for a role, if you're meeting someone new in general that could possibly be important for your career, even if it's just a friend, like doing your research. So
Hmm.
she treated Hugh Grant as if he was like a new starlet on the red carpet, like excited to be there, bright eyed and bushy tailed, when he's a veteran actor. In addition to the fact that she was effusive about his role in The Glass Onion, which he was on screen for like 1 second.
Yeah.
And he delivered that back to her. He was like, well, I was in it for 1 second. So she didn't know her audience. And I think it is every single person's job when you are going to a party, when you are about to go to a dinner, anytime you're going to be putting yourself in a new situation with people you don't know, like look at the invitation, Google the host, figure out who's going to be there, look at their Instagram, see what they talk about. If she had looked at any of Hugh Grant's previous interviews, she would know he's a little bit quirky, he's a little bit off. And like then she would tailor her interview to his personality and maybe get a better response. But it was painful. It was painful to watch,
Yeah,
honestly.
I actually really appreciated your take on it.
Thank
And
you.
I think it's so important because it's true, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to change who you are when you're talking to someone, but it does mean you're going to tailor maybe the way you say things, maybe what you say to make sure that you're getting your point across. Because you can say the same thing to 10,000 people and you're going to have 10,000 different reactions.
Yes. And how great is it to the person you're interviewing or you're meeting with when they realize, wow, she really did her homework? Like you're asking smart questions, not questions that you should know the answer to if you Googled the person.
Right. It's almost like just a little bit of respect.
Yes, very much so. I agree.
A lot of when we talk about personal brand and some of these concepts, a lot of them might seem intuitive, but when we don't name them, when we don't put that very clear and intentional spin on it or understanding towards it, it can backfire.
Yes, and you're really saying something that is so important because, and this is why the subtitle of On Brand is shape your narrative, share your
Mm,
vision, shift their perception. The shape your narrative part. If you do not shape your own narrative, people are just going to make up their own story about you. They're going to have their own story in their head. And a little bit of my PR skills come into play here because in PR, we were always thinking about the headline. Like, what's the headline? What do we want the story? Like, how do we want the story to be reported? And I think people need to do the same thing. It's like, how do you want the story of you reported? Well, give them that verbiage so that they can talk about you in the way that you want people to talk about you.
Do you ever find that when you talk about personal brand with people, and maybe women, maybe minorities, I don't know, because again, I think where I'm coming from might be a little cultural, because when you're saying that, I'm like, who am I? Do I even have a story? Like, it kind of goes to this little bit of underconfidence of and that lack of confidence holding you back from taking that control from that story.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think this is where I really tried to hold the reader's hand because I want to demystify the idea of personal brand. And even though the word narrative is a bit lofty, what I'm really saying here is, again, answering that question for yourself. What do you want to be known for in whatever circles you travel in? And how do you make sure people know that? So in the book, I have these exercises called mental gymnastics, which actually is like a workbook in the book. So every time there's like a new topic, so for example, like understanding how to figure out what you should be talking about online, understanding how to shape that narrative. All of those prompts have mental gymnastics exercises so you can just chip away at the idea. So, one of the first things I have readers do in the book is really work on their Venn diagram. What are you currently aligned with? What do you currently talk about? What are you passionate about? And really connecting the dots between those things to find that beautiful middle that really helps you understand, okay, this is what connects the dots between everything that's important to me, and this is what I want to be known for. And then working from there to figure out how you get people to understand it. So an easy example would be if someone was laid off from a job, right? And they're like, okay, so I'm a great example. I left a PR career of 17 years and I decided I don't want to do PR anymore. So I had to shape that narrative. I had to make sure people in my network knew that I no longer wanted to be a publicist. And then I had to feed them what I wanted. So I proactively reached out to people and saying, hey, hope you're well. I just wanted to check in and share a little news. I'm actually right now looking for consulting gigs in marketing and digital strategy. I know you know me as a former publicist, but this is an area that I'm really excited about. If you have any leads, let me know. And please let me know how I can help you and what you're working on. So if you don't tell people that, how will they know?
It's interesting. It goes back, when we were talking about you as the person behind the DKNY PR girl and then moving into your own personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And here it's you as a publicist moving into this other realm. There are moments of changes in our lives that we have to make sure that we are putting, like you're saying, stating what we want or where we're going and making sure that we're communicating that to other people.
Yes. And I had dedicated a whole section in the book to the power of the rebrand and the steps that you need to take to actually make that rebrand or pivot happen. And that can be because you want a job in a different industry. It could be that you are building something on your own, but there are a lot of reasons why someone might need to rebrand, including, and I give these case studies in the book, like, what if you're someone who's consistently passed over for a promotion? Something is amiss with the way that you're showing up at work, right? Or what if you're somebody who hasn't really innovated in their role in a long time? They've had this sort of very comfortable job and they feel like they've got it down pat, they can do it with their eyes closed, but you're not evolving anymore. All of those scenarios necessitate you rethinking how your personal brand is showing up at work.
Yeah, it's personal brand is not, I guess, from what we're talking about, I'm thinking personal brand is not something that stays consistent throughout your life.
You're right. It does not, but you can only have one at a time.
That's the trick.
That's the trick. And think about it this way. If you were starting a new role, that is a wonderful opportunity to think about how you're showing up, right? How, remember when we were little, we would have like our first day of school outfit and we were like so excited to like, you plan that outfit and you show up on your first day and it's like, here I am, here is my personality, my fashion personality, right? It's the same thing. It's like, how do you want to introduce yourself to this new group of people? And one of the ways to do that certainly is with style, but it's also in understanding how you're going to introduce yourself. So if someone's like, oh, why'd you leave your last job? If you don't prepare for a question like that and you were maybe didn't have such a great last job or something happened, you can be left like a deer in headlights, not understanding how to position yourself in this new environment. So all of these things can be planned for, but you have to do the thought process, right? You have to think it through. And it's all in the book.
I can't wait to read it. I'll be honest. The more we talk about it, I'm like, I could really use it. And it's I don't know. It's a topic that we talk about a lot at Ellevate, personal branding, but I don't think we've gone deep enough. So thinking and listening to some of the stuff that you're saying and that is in the book, it makes sense. And I think it starts with self-awareness, which is I think a lot of what you've said,
Yes.
understanding your values and coming to that so you can authentically build your brand, but tons of preparation.
Yes, tons of preparation. And I think what makes my point of view maybe a little bit different, because I think a lot of people speak about personal branding, and there's certainly a lot of great information out there. But what I decided to do was really take my more than 2 decades of luxury brand marketing and communications experience and apply it to people. Because when you think about luxury fashion and you think about the way that they really cultivate fans and they really bring you
Mhm.
into a world that you aspire to become a part of, they're creating this image that you want to be a part of. There are a lot of lessons in there. So this is really me taking my work experience and saying, like, okay, we did great things for our brands at work. Now let's apply that to people.
I like that. I like that approach.
Thank you.
So, preparation, and then you talked about your background and how this can be taken from your work with luxury brands to people. Who who are these people? Like, who is this book for?
I love that question. So, this book is for anyone who wants to feel proud when they hear the words, that's so on brand for you, right? When you have a
Yeah.
clear sense of self, that can be when you're starting out in your career, that you're planning ahead. It can be as a middle manager. It can be as an entrepreneur who's really looking to get the interest of investors. It could be someone who's an executive in corporate and really crushing their career, but wants to become a thought leader and show up that way. It could be someone who's had a wonderful career and now wants to be thought of for board seats. It could be someone who, worked at a law firm their entire life and now wants to start their own business. It could be someone who is unemployed, who has dreams greater than where they are today. It really is, like you said before, about self reflection and marrying the self reflection to public perception. And a strong personal brand is really when people mention your names in rooms you're not in and you hear about opportunities that other people haven't even heard of yet. That is really how you know that you have a strong personal brand.
I really like that because that's tangible. Like, that's when you say that, when people say your name when you're not in the room, when you hear about opportunities because of how people know you, that feels tangible. It doesn't feel like this weird concept out there.
Good, because again, this book is not about becoming an influencer. It's really about knowing yourself and making sure other people see you the way you want to be seen. Period. End of report.
And that sounds great to me. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the great questions.
Well, I was very excited to talk to you about this. I've been thinking a lot about my own personal brand, so this was very timely.
Listen, I don't think anyone can pick up on brand and not think through the work. I mean, in the book, I say, listen, I am going to hold your hand and I'm going to give you every single thing you ever needed to know about this subject, but you have to put in the thought process. I can't
Yeah.
give you your personal brand. You have to do the work, but I make it easy.
Well, again, if we're talking about self-reflection, it's kind of like therapy. You can have a great therapist, but you have
It's
to do the work.
true. It's true. Yes, you do.
Yeah. I relate a lot of things to therapy, so it's just you have to do the work. Well, thank you, and thank you for that. And I'm very excited for reading your book. It's coming out. I mean, I think when this podcast is out, the book will be out already, so people can get it anywhere, everywhere.
Anywhere, everywhere. It's called On Brand, Shape Your Narrative, Share Your Vision, Shift Their Perception.
Well, we're gonna do our little lightning round.
Okay.
So some just nice quirky questions
I
to
love
end
I love a
on.
lightning round. Let's go.
Okay. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No, it does not. I don't know who put it on there in the first place.
If you could time travel, where is the first place you would go?
I would like to go back to the 1950s because I think that was such a wholesome, pure time. And I think our world is missing so much of that today.
Yeah,
So I would love to see what that was like.
that's an interesting one. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Hmm. Probably to see the future. I'm very into psychics, so I do my best to see the future all the time.
I love that. I'd be so scared though.
No, because you know what? I think it's helpful. Listen, they're not I mean, they're probably not going to tell you like a horrible thing's going to happen, but I think it's good because I don't know, I'm not a big planner. Like I don't have like this big 3-year
Mm.
strategy or 5-year strategy. So for me, it's like if you could just tell me like, I don't know how next month is going to be, that would be great. Like I'd love to get a little
Eh,
sneak peek.
I'd like that. I like that approach. Just a short little, trailer.
Yes, a little trailer, exactly.
Dream dinner guest.
Oh my gosh. Dream dinner guest. I think I would love to just have dinner with like a whole slew of comedians. Like I want to like have dinner with Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld and I just want to laugh. I just want to laugh a lot.
I love that answer. That would be so much fun.
So much fun.
Most used app on your phone.
Oh my gosh. I mean probably Lyft, but just because I'm so lazy. But I would say definitely podcast app, constantly checking
Okay,
that.
cool. And finally, what's one thought you'd want to leave with our listeners?
Such a good question. I would say that open your mind to the possibilities. And one of the things that I say in On Brand is why not me? Right? If you ask yourself, if you're really struggling with like, are you worthy or you got invited to something and you're unsure like why you're there or how it was possible, instead of questioning like if you deserve it or if it's supposed to be that way, just ask yourself why not me? Because the answer is going to be it can be you. You just have to get out of your own way.
I love that answer so much.
Thanks.
Why not me? Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for that. I don't know. This was great.
Yes, so fun. So fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
And we are back. Loved that interview. Love her. She's one of the ones. I don't know if I'm just gonna tell everybody the behind this is. Her team reached out to us to be like, "Would you be interested in having her on the podcast?" And I read her bio and I was like, "Yes, I would." And so we were stoked. Great interview. Just great conversation.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's really, really cool. Highly recommend her book. Again, On Brand. Look it up.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Now we're going to get into the history makers, which these segments will continue. I will keep telling you about the history makers. I will keep telling you about what's going on at Ellevate this week. We might reshuffle how it works. We might shuffle it all to the beginning since there's going to be a little bit less back and forth with it just being me. But don't worry. I know like
There's only going
I
to be
know these,
fourth.
yeah, I know that these segments are very popular and we will not get rid of them. I promise. But so let's go ahead and go to the history makers, starting out with a personal idol of mine. Lizzo became the first Black woman headliner at Napa Festival.
I love Lizzo.
Me too.
Jody Calahoo Stonehouse became the first First Nations woman elected to the Legislative Assembly of Alberta.
And she was not the only one making history there because Rhiannon Hoyle became the first Black woman elected to the Legislative Assembly of Alberta.
Good job, Alberta.
Yeah.
Helen Park became the first Asian woman nominated for a Tony for Best Original Score.
Yes. Emma Morrison became the first Indigenous woman to win Miss World Canada.
And I will say this is a personal idol of mine. Gloria Estefan became the first Latina to be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And I love that.
I put that one last. I figured your last history maker that you read should be a good one.
It is a good one. I really appreciate that. Gloria Estefan reminds me of my mom. She used to love all her songs in Miami Sound Machine, and I would listen to them with her while I was growing up. So it makes me very happy.
Yeah. So, yeah, as we said before, Maricella's interviews are still going to keep going on. You'll hear a few of mine peppered in as we go, and then eventually it'll just be my interviews. It's going to be a while that you'll still have Maricella's. Maricella, do you want to introduce next week's guest? We've had her on once before, but we wanted to bring her back on, I know, because there's certainly a lot of updates in her world right now.
Yeah, so actually, this is also very, just like Gloria Stefan, this is also very close to my heart to be introducing my conversation with Patricia as the last, teaser I give. Patricia Roberts is on a mission to encourage employers to help employees pay down student loan debt and to save in advance to avoid it. She is passionate about helping people get to higher education, receive higher education, get through it without debt or by limiting the amount of debt that you can have. She is the chief operating officer at Gift of College. And prior to that, she held lots of roles in large financial services firms. So you'll hear a little bit about her story, but not that much. What we talk about a lot is 529 plans and things that are helpful when it comes to student loan debt, because we've been, you hear in the news there's so many things going on, and student loan repayment is one of them that keeps coming up and will be heard and ruled in the next few weeks. So we will see what happens there. So I wanted to have this conversation with Patricia. The reason I say it's also really special to me is actually not so much about the student loan debt, because I actually talk about that in the podcast of my experience, but it is because Patricia was one of my squad mates last year. So at the top, we talked a little bit about our squad program, and Patricia Roberts, she was one of my squad mates last year. She was a huge sounding board when I first took the role of CEO and throughout the year that has passed. So I'm very excited that that I was able to have this conversation with her.
Me too.
Well, y'all, take care. Be well. Remember to take care of yourself. And hopefully I will see you out in the wild.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ellevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Ellevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Ellevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Ellevate membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.